All right, welcome to Drawing 1, and this is our first assignment, which is to draw an object. So I've selected a simple object, an apple. So what I'm going to do to start with, I'm going to use a line to describe the shape of that apple or its contour. Now looking at that apple, I could look at the apple and I could do something like this. I could say, well, the apple kind of looks like that, and it dips down here, and then it comes around like that, and there's my apple, right? And it has a little dip in here, a little divot where the stem comes out of it, and there's an apple. Now I kind of used it as a general idea, but I really wasn't looking at that apple. I wasn't drawing that apple. I drew this rather generic shape of an apple. So the thing I can do here is I can actually look at this apple and draw that apple. And I'm going to do that by using a technique called citing, which is actually measuring the apple. I'm going to take my pen, and I'm using a marker so you can see that on the paper there. And I'm going to touch my marker. I'm going to close one eye and move my marker up to the left side of the apple. I'm giving my eye a straight line or a straight edge against which I'm measuring or assessing the shape of the apple. So on the left side of the apple, it does something like this. Then I'm going to measure the top of the apple. I see it's slightly higher on the left than on the right. And then I'm going to measure the right side of the apple. It bows out more on this side like that. And then I'm going to measure the bottom of the apple, and it's somewhat curved. It kind of curves in like this and like that. All right, so this drawing is based on my measuring. I'm going to measure where that little dip in the top of the apple is, where the stem comes out of it, right about there. The stem in there is very short, but I'm going to put one in here because I like stems, unlike Cezanne. All right, so there. Now this drawing is based on that specific apple. Now is there a right or wrong here? No. One is kind of generic, one is more specific. It's just about what you're trying to say with your drawing. In other words, drawing is another way of communicating ideas, right? And so whether or not you pick this one or this one depends on what you're trying to say about an apple or about a specific apple. So the other thing I want you to describe an object using a line. The other thing I want you to do is you're going to look at the assignment page on Canvas and do the assignment. I'm not going to get into it now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called the blind contour drawing. This is not a blind contour drawing. It's looking at the apple. It's using it. So a blind contour drawing is where I'm actually only looking at the apple. I'm going to put my pen on the paper where I think I'm going to start with the apple, and I'm just going to slowly go around looking at the contour of the apple and not look at my paper. That's why they call it a blind contour drawing. Now the drawing is irrelevant. It doesn't matter what the drawing is about. This exercise is about really studying the shape and the contour of an object. It's training your eye to really see more accurately. All right? So there we go. Now I'm going to look at my drawing, and it doesn't look like much. But I learned something. I really studied that apple. I thought about its shape. I thought about its contour. Okay? Now getting back to this drawing, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add the shadow to it. Shadows are important because it tells us three very important things. It tells us about the shape of the object, right? Because the shadow projects out from the object. It tells us about the type of light we have, whether it's a hard light or a soft light, whether light is a high, low, or low, whether it's a sunrise or a sunset, any of those things, or incandescent or fluorescent. And also the shadow connects the object to the surface of the paper. Right now my apple is just sort of floating there. So I'm going to measure the apple. I'm going to measure the width of the apple from side to side, put my pen against the right, my thumb against the left, and that approximates the width of my apple. If I'm further back, that measurement's smaller. If I'm closer, that measurement's bigger. It doesn't matter as long as I use that measurement then to measure the length of the shadow. So my shadow is about 2/3 as long as the apple. So if this is, let's say, 3 inches, my shadow is going to come out, or maybe only about 2 inches, about that far. I'm going to touch it against the bottom of the shadow where it comes out from underneath the apple. It comes out slightly below it, like around here. I see the tail end of the apple just tucked in underneath the edge of the apple here. And then where the shadow comes out from behind the apple, again, I'm going to lower my pen and see where that happens, and see right where my pen bisects my apple, and my shadow's coming out right about there. So my shadow, as I measure, is going to fall within those 4 parameters, okay? So what I'm now going to do, I can even measure the shape of the shadow and draw that in here, like so. Oops, could go a little lower. Fit in there. So there is the shape of my shadow based on my measuring. Now, the other thing I want you to do is I want you to use line to describe shadows or values, in other words. So values meaning, like, for example, that shadow. What I have is a contour line drawing of that apple. It's not very three-dimensional. But I can start to use line, and the basic idea with value is darker values have a tendency to recede, and lighter values have a tendency to come forward. So by starting to describe the shadow on the apple, by using lines, this is what's called hatching. I'm describing that shadow, okay? If I want that to be darker, I can put more lines up there, closer together. Or I can do what's called cross-hatching, which means coming in from the other direction like this, and making it darker, and describing the shadow. I might bring the shadow out more over here. And a little bit more under here. Also the shadow on the table. I can describe it using lines as well. So your first assignment is going to be do contour line drawing of 4 objects. Then do a blind contour object of each one of those objects, and then use line to describe value. Now there's 3 basic skills you're developing. One is your eye, getting your eye to see things more accurately. The second skill is the motor skills in your hands. When you tell your hand to make a straight line or curved line, it understands that. That's all about practice. And the third skill you're developing is understanding the medium you work with. Every medium has its peculiarities, the way it likes to be worked with. You know, whether it's pencil or charcoal or marker or pastel or Conti, each one of those things are different. See, I'm describing and making my shadow darker. Remember, dark precedes and light comes forward. All right? So if I want something to pop forward more, I want to leave it lighter. If I want something to recede more, like this, I want this edge to recede here over here, put a little value on it. When you do your drawings, put them in front of a definite light source. Don't put them under fluorescent lighting. You won't get very good shadows. Put them by a window, under an incandescent lamp. You know, so there we go. Get that edge to curve away from my eye. I'll add some value to it. I'll add some value here too, leaving this area here as my highlight. All right, there we go. So that's using line. That's our first assignment. Look on canvas and look at our assignment for our first assignment. All right, thank you, everyone.